I'm here every month, first Sunday in the month, and it's a part of my regular life now, of my very interesting life. I lead a very interesting life. I'm looking forward to that. Since I saw you last, I've been to a number of different places and met a variety of different people, including the other evening. I had a very unusual time when I had to go to Lambeth Palace to an event with the Archbishop of Canterbury, who I have to tell you was very respectful and wide me very deeply like this. I didn't quite know what to say. But it was a very interesting evening in connection with my prison work, of course. And it was about what we call, or what is being called, restorative justice. And this is a very advanced way of tackling the problem of crime and the damage which is done when people steal or do some kind of crime, some kind of harm to other people. Because naturally, usually, the response is to want some sort of revenge. People often call it justice, but what they want is revenge. And this is one of the unfortunate things, that one kind of path leads to another. One kind of misdeed and harmful action usually leads to another. It's the same with war or any kind of violence, that someone or one group assaults another, and then the so-called victim or the one that's been affected then strikes back, and inevitably it goes back and forth like this for generations. And there's no end to it. And all that happens is that people become more and more hurt and affected by the harm. And of course, the same thing happens with conflicts between nations. And there's very great reluctance for some reason to looking for a different way of dealing with harm. At least out there in the world, there's a great deal of reluctance. And people really much prefer to simply follow killing, to follow their killings and their defilements, and strike back, and anger produces anger, hatred produces hatred, violence produces violence, and so it goes on. And it seems endless. The approach to restorative justice is to look at the whole problem. And fundamentally what is happening is there's an attempt to understand, to accept the harm, and to understand what has happened, and to look for new and skillful ways of dealing with it. And it's very important we do this. We do it with other people, but we do it between nations. Because otherwise, the hurt and the harm just goes on and on and on. And it looks as though mankind, people, just never learn and never grow and never get any better. You know, we've advanced tremendously, materially and technologically. We can do all sorts of things that were at one time never dreamt of, or perhaps just imagined in science fiction or in my boyhood comics. These things, all sorts of amazing things now are possible that weren't in the past. And yet, still, the minds of people are a prey to greed, hatred and delusion. And still the response to any kind of violence or hurt or pain is more pain, more violence, more trouble. And it's very, very sad. So the restorative justice people are looking for new ways. And you know, as we go through life, we have to be looking for new ways of dealing with problems. We shouldn't just take the easy way out or the quick way out and respond through our killings. So we really have to stop and just try to understand what's happening and understand the other person or persons. You know, the word Buddha means the one who knows. So Buddhism is the religion of understanding. It's the religion of knowing. And we have to apply that attempt to understand in all sorts of ways as we go through life. And only then can we really grow and develop. We have many problems. All action, I was always taught, is problem solving. So everything we do is really to solve a problem. It may be a very simple, mundane, everyday problem, but sometimes they're quite big and demanding problems that we have to solve. And nowadays, as technology advances, our problems multiply as well. So many things are improved by technology, but it also opens up new questions, new moral questions. And we have to really look into our minds, and we also really have to take the Buddha's teachings and learn to apply them and understand that the Buddha was talking about the experience of living. It's our life that these teachings are there for. They're living teachings. They're not just ideas that someone's come up with. So, amongst the problems that we now have because of technology is, well, we have problems within the field of medicine. And we get asked questions on abortion. We get asked questions about transplant surgery. We get asked questions about euthanasia. And these three are big topics and are difficult ones. And we have again to look for new approaches when we're faced with them. We mustn't just, as it were, take the easy way. We have to look at the big picture, and we have to try our best to apply understanding, and at the same time be true to our principles. I have heard speakers say, oh yes, it's all right in certain circumstances to tell lies. You know, someone is close to the point of death, or you don't want to upset him, so you don't say, well, you know, we'll be going home soon, when you know full well he's never going home. And I disagree with that, you see. I think we have to be very committed to being as truthful as we can. We know that we fall down sometimes, and we know that sometimes on the spur of the moment we say things which are not quite right. But our intention, our aim must be to be as truthful as possible. It is said that the one precept that the person intent on full enlightenment cannot break is that about truthfulness. There has to be an absolute commitment to truth in all its forms. So these issues, like transplant surgery, this comes up from time to time. And I remember a little while ago, or a few months, or maybe a couple of years ago, time seems to pass very quickly for me now. So it was probably a year or two ago, the National Health Service wanted to print up some leaflets putting the positions of the different religions forward, so that in an attempt to get people to be more liberal with their offering of organs. And I saw the Buddhist leaflet, and I was appalled, really, because it went on quite a lot about compassion. And of course it said, you know, Buddhists always want to be helpful and to be kind. And of course we have no problem over donating organs. And there was absolutely no mention in that of the person who might be offering the organs, of the person who was in fact dying. And this was a very grave omission. And I objected to that leaflet on those grounds. Yes, of course we want to help people in trouble. It really pretty much goes without saying. But the person who needs the organ isn't the only one in trouble. The person who is dying is also in trouble. And we all have to go through this process of dying, and it's of immense importance to us that we we go through it as skillfully and as well as possible. We can't avoid it. It's going to happen. Some of us will die very quickly. Some of us may die violently. Some of us may have the luxury of a long preparation and will die in the comfort of our homes and with people who care for us around us. But we can't be sure of that. What we do know is that we will die and we don't know when. And so actually from a Buddhist perspective we should be preparing for that moment right now. The way that we live should be our preparation for the way that we die. Buddhist teaching says very clearly that in the moments, the last moments, just before we die, in those moments, we will have some kind of effect from the life that we've lived. Some people have a kind of vision of something connected with how they've lived. Some people just have their whole life flash before them. But sure enough, those last moments are affected by how you live, and those last moments affect the new moments, the first moments of the new life. So how you're acting now, what you're doing now, how you're living now, affects your future. And when people come to me occasionally and want their fortunes told, well, it's forbidden to a monk to tell fortunes for a start, I have to tell you. But nevertheless, people do come and ask for some kind of prediction occasionally. And the ready and easy answer is always, look at your life now. What are you doing now? How are you living your life now? Because that's where it is. And that's where, of course, we always have an opportunity to make changes and improve ourselves. So the present time, this present moment, is absolutely invaluable. And you must be really careful of it. Because you don't know whether there will be another moment. This is it, always, right now. Now coming back to the question of transplants, well, I'm not a medical person, but I've read a certain amount and I've been told a certain amount about what happens. But the concern always is, for me, for the donor. We don't know how much we might be aware of in the dying process. And I think it's very important that if we decide to offer our organs if we're close to death, then we must somehow prepare for that and have people willing to tell us what's happening, and also still to give us the space and the time to die at our leisure as well and as carefully as we can. And the big worry always is that the process might be just hurried up a bit because the fresh organs are so desperately needed. And these are the things that concern us about this business. And it is very noticeable that the donor is kind of, a dying person is left out. It's as though they're no use anymore. And we notice this, of course. Elderly people are not so cared for here in the West because they're not much use anymore. I'm beginning to feel it myself. And I notice it too when I walk our lane and all these cyclists come pounding along, and the disrespect is extraordinary. I mean, I'm not exactly ancient, but I'm not exactly in the first flush of youth either. But it's as though, old codger is sort of not really much use to us anymore. But we mustn't think of life in this way. Life is a very extraordinary experience. And all the time, as we're living it, we're doing things. And all the time, if we apply ourselves and if we really understand something of the Buddhist teachings, we are growing. We are developing ourselves. It's all an opportunity for growth, development, wisdom and understanding. And it's precious. It's precious because we don't know whether we'll have another opportunity. Buddhist people quite go on sometimes about, oh well, not going to make it this time round, but we'll do a bit of merit and next time we'll have a better chance. But don't think you're going to have a next time. The Buddha himself, if you remember, said that this birth as a human being is a pretty rare event. You may remember the simile of the turtle, the blind turtle, swimming around in the oceans of the world, coming to the surface once every 7 years. And there's a piece of wood with a hole in it, floating around on these great oceans of the world. And the chances of that turtle coming to the surface and poking his head through that piece of wood are greater than the chance of us having a human birth. Human birth is very precious and very extraordinary experience. So don't count on having this chance again. Grasp it now with both hands, because and every opportunity to develop and grow, and be humble enough too to be always growing and always open to trying to understand, to be questioning and understanding and striving to understand. These questions about transplant and so on, sometimes we can't come easily with an absolute answer. We have to contemplate it. We have to put ourselves in the position of the person who might be dying. Are you, as you lie there in your hospital bed, imagining the surgeons on the other side of the door sharpening their instruments, can't wait to get at you? I don't know. It may not be like that, but what goes through a person's mind? The other questions, things like abortion. Well, quite clear. There's no doubt about it. According to Buddhist teaching, that's bar. It's out of the question. It's the deliberate taking of life of a human being. And it's out of the question. Some people will always be saying to me, well, if you could save a certain number of lives by taking one life, isn't it a good thing to do to take the one life to save the 100? No, it's not. Because in the taking of the life, there's the gun. It's not the further objective that might be the result of taking that one life. When you actually act, your intent, your cetana, is to kill that one person. So you are killing. There may be a wider motive, but the cetana is still to kill. And you don't know. You don't know what might happen. Some years ago, I was appalled. I was at a Buddhist gathering, and I heard someone who was quite well known go on about this example of a person, apparently some years back in this country. There was something in the news about a woman who was pregnant with twins, and there was something wrong, so all three, she and the two babies, were likely to die. But if she had one of them aborted, she and the other would survive. And it was suggested that that was the appropriate thing to do, and that there was no alternative but to make some kind of moral judgment one way or the other. But that isn't so. There is such a thing as doing nothing. And doing nothing is karmically neutral. When you do nothing, I don't know what to do about something, so I do nothing. I'm not actually, my cetana is not there to do something. I'm just doing nothing. And so in the Vinaya, for example, if we see someone in trouble, dying, and we do nothing about it, it is not an offence. It is not a serious offence. If we deliberately help that person to die, then it becomes a parajika. It's a very serious, it's a heavy offence. But the Buddha acknowledged that sometimes we do nothing. We don't know what to do, we do nothing. But the interesting thing is that when you do nothing, the outcome is uncertain. You don't know what the outcome is going to be. So you do nothing. Maybe, despite all the expert medical advice, those three don't know. You don't know. But you're acting, you're not acting, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. Take one life, you know what the outcome is. You deliberately, your cetana is there to kill. some people know me. I'm very fond of animals. And I usually have, quite a few animals living with me. And many years ago, I had this delightful little dog. He's a little legend in the forest hermitage, Toby. And he used to go practically everywhere with me. And he'd sit with me when I meditated. And he'd come in and see everyone after the evening sitting. And he was great. He was a wonderful little dog. And he was very old. And he was about, we don't know exactly, something like 17 or 18. And he fell ill. So I took him to the vet. And the vet did all sorts of tests. And said to me, he said, well, that's it. I've forgotten exactly what he said was wrong, but that was it. He said, do you want me to intervene? Meaning, do you want me to put him down? Do you want me to kill him? I said, no. I'll take him back. So I took him back, and I decided to take a week off from my prison visits and stuff, and just be with him and say farewell to him. He'd been my companion for years. So the least I could do was care for him in his final days. So that's what I did. So there we were on Tuesday, come to Wednesday, he's still pretty rough and I'm looking after him. Come the Thursday evening, I went to feed the other dog I have, and I had this nice piece of omelette that had been left over. And I took it out of the box to give the other dog, and Toby jumped up and snatched it out of my hand. The next few minutes, I'm going to see that again in a bit of a mess.